Have you ever felt like you're just trying on different versions of yourself to see which one fits? Well, that's exactly what we're jumping into today. The totally exciting, sometimes confusing, but absolutely universal mission of figuring out who you are. We're going to unpack the real science behind how teenagers build their identity. You know, it's the question. It echoes through high school hallways, it's behind every choice a teenager makes. Who am I? And it turns out this isn't just teenage angst. Nope, it's a fundamental, absolutely crucial part of growing up. So let's talk about this identity crisis. It sounds so dramatic, right? But it's really less about one single big crisis and more about a major turning point in life. It's this period of super intense development where it feels like every single choice could define your entire future. The psychologist Erik Erikson just nailed it when he called it the battle of identity versus role confusion. Basically, if you're between the ages of 12 and 18, your main job is to figure out what you believe in and where you fit in. If you do, you develop what he called fidelity. You can commit to your values. But if you don't, you can get stuck in what he called role confusion, just feeling lost about your place in the world. And you know what? This whole process is messy. It's not like you just wake up one day and, bam, you have a fully formed identity. Not at all. Instead, most teenagers experiment. They try on different selves, different friend groups, different hobbies, different ideas, all just to see what feels right, what feels authentic. Erikson had this fantastic term for this phase, a psychological moratorium. Just think of it like a socially acceptable timeout. It's like society gives teens a little pass to put a final decision on hold while they go out and explore all the options. It's a totally necessary pause before you make those huge life commitments. Okay, so if this is a journey everyone goes on, does everybody take the exact same road to find themselves? Absolutely not. Building on Erikson's work, researchers found that there are actually 4 pretty distinct paths that teens tend to follow. So a psychologist named James Marcia figured out that the path you're on really boils down to 2 key ingredients: exploration and commitment. Exploration is pretty much what it sounds like. It's the active searching part, asking questions, trying new things. And commitment, that's when you land on something, making a real choice about who you are or what path you're on. Okay, let's break down the 4 statuses that come from mixing these 2 things. First up is diffusion. That's when you're low on both exploration and commitment. You're kind of just drifting. Then there's foreclosure. That's low exploration but high commitment. This happens when you just adopt an identity from, say, your parents without really questioning it for yourself. Next is moratorium. High exploration, low commitment. That's that active searching phase we talked about. And finally, you have identity achievement. That's the goal. You've explored your options and you've made a real personal commitment. And this quote right here, it's a perfect real-world example of that moratorium status. You can just feel it, right? This person is actively sampling different groups, different personas, the cool kids, the stoners, all in this clear search to figure out who they are. This is exploration in action, plain and simple. Now, this whole identity thing doesn't just happen in one big bucket. It actually plays out across a bunch of different arenas in your life. And 2 of the biggest ones are definitely gender and ethnicity. All right, first things first. It is so important to understand the difference here. Sex refers to the biological stuff, the physical and physiological characteristics that define us as male, female, or intersex. Gender, on the other hand, is a social construct. It's all about the roles, the behaviors, and the expectations that a society attaches to being a man or a woman. And our whole understanding of gender is expanding so fast, way beyond just a simple male-female binary. These are just some of the terms that people use now to describe their identity. You've got cisgender, transgender, non-binary, gender fluid. It's really seen more and more as a spectrum, not a switch. And this is a huge area of exploration for a lot of young people today. A really similar journey often happens with ethnic identity. A researcher named Jean Finney came up with a 3-stage model. It usually starts with unexamined ethnic identity, where you just haven't given it much thought. Then something happens, an event, a conversation that sparks an ethnic identity search, where you start actively exploring your heritage. And eventually, you can reach achieved ethnic identity, where you have a clear, confident sense of who you are in that part of your life. Of course, none of this happens in a vacuum, right? A teen's identity is constantly being shaped and pushed and pulled by the super powerful forces of parents and peers. With parents, it's this really delicate dance. Teens naturally start to pull away, looking for more independence, more autonomy. And yeah, this can lead to some conflict over things like curfews and privacy. But And this is so important. Research shows that teens who keep a strong, supportive connection with their parents actually have fewer emotional problems. It's all about balancing that need for freedom with the need for connection. Now, when we talk about friends, it's actually helpful to break it down into two things. You've got your clique. That's your small, tight-knit group of actual friends you hang out with. And then there's your crowd. That's a bigger group based on reputation, like the jocks or the theater kids. You might not even know everybody in your crowd, but that social label plays a huge part in your identity at school. So here's the bottom line. Your peers play this dual role. On the one hand, they are an amazing source of social support and a place to figure out social skills. But on the other hand, they can also be a source of negative pressure, sometimes leading to riskier choices, especially when bad behavior gets reinforced by the group. All right, so after all of this searching, all this pressure, and all this exploration, you finally get there. You arrive at a fixed, finished identity, right? Well, the science says not exactly. This brings us to a really cool idea called MAMA cycling. It stands for Moratorium, Achievement, Moratorium, Achievement. What it means is that even after you've achieved an identity, life happens. You might change careers or have a new experience that throws you right back into a period of exploration, a moratorium, before you land on a new commitment. And that, right there, is probably the single most important thing to take away from all this. The search for who am I doesn't just stop when you turn 20. It's a lifelong journey of questioning, exploring, and becoming. The teenage years, they're just the supercharged, intense beginning of that awesome process. So I'll just leave you with this question to think about. Doesn't matter if you're 16 or 60. What parts of your identity feel settled, and what parts are you still exploring? Thanks so much for joining me.